Hi there, I'm Sara Sheehan, and welcome to my podcast, Transformational Thinkers with Sara Sheehan. Today I'm talking with my friend, Dr. Robin Owens, about her focus on leadership purpose and all that she does in her work as a tenured professor in religious studies at Mount St. Mary's University in LA, on her podcast, Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin, and in her books. Dr. Robin, I am so glad to get to spend time with you today. And you are such an interesting person, and you have such a warm heart that I'm so glad to be able to share you with our listeners.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm just so glad to be here. I consider it an honor. I know I can tell your commitment to this work and how important it is to you to get this message out. So it's a joy and a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to have you here today. And so tell me a little bit about what led you to get a PhD in religious studies from Claremont Graduate University.
Pursuing a PhD was a third career move. I'm guessing some listeners might understand something about a third career move. But if I really look back and reflect on it, I think it's at the core of who I am to always pursue the big questions of life. And that's what the PhD in religious studies helped me to do. Pursue the big questions of meaning and purpose. And when I have a distinct memory of being about 6 years old. And when I look back, I think this is where it all started. And it took me 3 careers to get there, but that's where it started. 6 years old, summertime, out of school for the summer, sitting on the front porch of my family's home. It has a big front porch, 3-story family home in Connecticut. And I think a lot of the homes in the Northeast are like this. Looks like a big house on the outside, but there are 3 family units in the inside. So my parents owned the home. My cousins lived on the 2nd and 3rd floor. There were about 8 cousins and siblings and all of us. But I was not with them. I was sitting on the front porch, quietly having some time to myself, looking across the street into the trees. And I hear my father inside with my siblings and cousins, they were playing and about to come out onto the porch. And he said to them, "Don't go out there and bother Robin. She's out there contemplating the meaning of life." And they laughed and they thought that was so funny. And I felt embarrassed because I was not like the other kids. You know, they were all playing together and I was out there by myself. And so I felt weird. I felt like I was the weird one and the strange one. But when I became an adult and I started thinking, reflecting on that, I was like, oh my goodness, my father knew. He was right. I was doing that. And he was protecting me. He wasn't shaming me. He was protecting my time. And so
That's beautiful.
I've always been that person since then until now. So I believe that's at the crux of pursuing a PhD in religion.
Excellent. So you were always contemplating the deeper meaning in life, even at 6 years old.
Yes.
That's excellent. And so what role would you say that your faith has played in creating your current career foundation in publishing, in speaking, in teaching, obviously in higher education, in writing and podcasting and more?
Yes, my whole life is motivated by faith. I believe for me and for everyone, but I'm talking about for me, I believe we are all created with a purpose. And I believe it's our life's work to then express that purpose. Whether it's in a job, a career, or not, we are created to express what that is. And I believe it is not always what people tend to think generally. They think it's a big, huge, monumental thing like curing cancer. It could be that. But for most people, I believe it is to express the best of who you are, who you were created to be, your true self. Now, these sound all kind of vague words like, who is that? But for me, I have a way of understanding and have learned to teach others how to get at who they are. And then the purpose is to just express that, whether you express it on your job or somewhere else. And I tend to focus on expressing it through work. But that's a spiritual principle that guides me. And based on my faith that we are created to express our purpose.
And so essentially what our foundational design
Yes.
is what we're talking about here. And so talk with me a little bit more about what you think leadership purpose is and how passion, values, natural abilities, and service play into it.
Yes, that is everything I just said in a nutshell, right? I believe, like I said, we're called to express ourselves. That's our purpose. And when you do that through your vocation, through your career, through your work, that's what I call leadership purpose. Now, some people might not work. They might express their purpose in other ways. For example, a parent at home with children expressing that as their purpose. So my focus is specifically when people express their purpose through their work.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they get at their purpose, remember I mentioned being who they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
I believe our life gives us clues. And the clues takes the form of our passions, those things we really love, our values, those things that really matter to us, our natural abilities, gifts, strengths, zone of genius. And when we combine those things, not in and of themselves, only when all three of them are combined, some aspect of all three of them are combined in service to someone beyond yourself, then you're in your purpose.
Mm-hmm. And so it's combining that zone of genius,
values and passions.
Mm-hmm. And that audience, essentially.
Yes.
The person that you're supposed to be serving.
Yes.
It may be a persona or a type of individual or a type of business.
Yes.
Or an actual ideal client.
Or a cause or something that's significant to you.
That's beautiful. I love that. And so talk with me a little bit about the books that you have written so far. And I say so far because I'm pretty confident there's going to be more.
You must be reading my mind.
There's going to be more. And so the two books that I'm aware of, Making Purpose-Based Decisions, an inspirational guide to more meaning and purpose in your business and career. And the other book, My Faith in the Constitution is Whole, Barbara Jordan and the Politics of Scripture. I commend you for beautiful titles.
Oh, thank you.
By the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I enjoy doing that. So to hear you say that means something to me.
Excellent. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about the through line, essentially what the main message is for the two books that you have brought into the world so far.
The through line is what we've been talking about already. It's my understanding and interpretation of leadership purpose. And the Barbara Jordan was a leader, a woman leader back in the 1970s. And she used her purpose and expressed it through her work in politics. And so that was she was on a mission. She happened to be Christian, but she explicitly expressed her purpose without preaching religion, but using the avenue of politics to make a difference. So that was her leadership purpose. And the other book you mentioned is on its way to be published. So it's coming out into the world soon. And that chronicles my own career journey and the lessons I've learned and how I've taught people to now discover and then express their leadership purpose.
Mm-hmm. And so a natural extrapolation of this discussion for me is if so much of your work is around leadership purpose and you're talking with so many people in the world, whether it's a student in a classroom environment or a potential client out in the world, you, I assume, are also trying to get the people that you're working with, whether it's students or clients, to help them to tune in to what their true leadership purpose is and understand that zone of genius. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And to help them with the end goal of expressing the best of who they are. Because when they tap into their natural abilities, which we were calling zone of genius, combined, like I say, with the values and the passion in service, it's the only way to express the best of who you are, which, by the way, is also your purpose. And so, yes, I do that everywhere I go. For whoever will listen, I shout it from the mountaintops.
Excellent. Excellent. And so if you're helping a client outside of a higher education environment, you're working with a client professionally, you do that through coaching. And what other modalities might you employ in that engagement?
Yes, in addition to coaching, which takes a form sort of a executive leadership coaching, there is workshops. The teacher in me, as you know, I teach at a university, so the teacher in me loves to teach. I have online courses, and I speak, keynote or whatever kinds of presentations, and it's always about this message and the transformation and confidence that could come in people's lives when they have this experience.
Excellent. And don't you also help someone if they have created a book, turn that into a course? Isn't that one of the many things you do?
It is, again, the teacher in me can't help but teach. And those authors, mostly so far, they've been women. They've written a book because they have a message. They have something that can help others. And I consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to help them put that book in the format where they can reach so many more people and with a drastically reduced amount of time, effort, and energy through a course. Of course, the book has
Nice.
its place, but you can do more with a course. So I feel like that's part of my way of making a difference by helping them get their message out into the world in a broader way. So it's still all connected to purpose and helping them live their purpose and deliver their message.
Let's say someone comes to you tomorrow, a new client. How long does that take? What's the time frame of a project for you when someone knocks on your door and says, Dr. Robin, I really need your help. I have a book. I know I could have a course. How long will it take me to create and stand this up?
Now, of course, that depends on the work the person does.
Of course. Of course.
So
Let's say they are an amazing achiever. They're very focused and they set aside an acceptable amount of time on a daily basis, 5 days a week.
Yeah, if they did it 5 days a week, they could have it probably done within a month, 30 days, I would say. But the average high achieving woman in the busyness of it all, 90 days is a better time frame with, this thing came up, I'm traveling here and doing all that.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, 90 days is. But I mean, when you think about it, when the book is done and doing the work to transform it into a different format takes some work and some time. But when you have a book, you have a head start on those who don't have a book, so to speak, when you're creating a course.
Well, I can certainly understand the completeness of thought, the extent, the amount of thinking that you put into the outline, follow through on major thoughts, areas that you might want to focus or dive into.
Yes.
Areas for additional inquiry as well as discussion or engagement.
Yes.
might come out once you already have a book.
You're absolutely right. And often authors hear from their readers so they know what the next steps are, what people want, what the readers want, to your point, a deeper dive,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, and moving into more of the implementation now that they have a general understanding of whatever their particular topic is.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you letting me double click a couple of levels down into the work that you do specifically with clients. I'd love to hear a couple of examples that you might be able to share of client engagements where you've actually worked with a client one on one and the transformation that you've actually achieved based on your work with the individual, not only to highlight the individual and what they're able to do, but how you are engaging with the client and making a difference.
Yes. And as you mentioned earlier, I have lanes, two lanes of clients. One, we just talked about. Basically, my clients are high achieving women, authors. And so for those who want to broaden their message and create a course based on their book, that's one lane. The second lane are women who are high achieving women who have moved up the career ladder in one way or another, only to get to the top to find that they're at the top of the wrong ladder. Something is missing. They've been working for others' expectations and doing all the things and making all the achievements, and then they get there and they find that they are missing in the equation. So those are the two lanes. Which would you want to hear? You asked about the transformation. Which was your question directed toward?
This is totally what you would like to share. And so you could share one of each, or you could share two of one lane. It's totally up to you.
Okay, I'll do one of each. In the course, we'll start there. In the course creation, I distinctly remember a client who was passionate. She knew that she had a message that she wanted to get out there, but she had so much information, and even being a high achiever, she had a great level of doubt. Oftentimes, it's not the material. It's not organizing it, which I do help them do. I like, this is the way you structure it and this is the way you can do it. But often is the question behind it, is this good enough? Is this the right way? And looking for validation, which certainly is understandable. If that's not your background, you would have those concerns. So in addition to the step-by-step process of organizing her content and how to deliver it, because often these women who have written books are also good speakers. And so that's not even the issue. It's just like, what part am I going to say when? So I saw her transformation from having what she thought was a lot of information, didn't know what to do with it, and having I don't want to say a crisis of confidence because that might be too strong, but really having some real confidence issues. To at the end, not only having the course that she put out into the world with glee and joy, but she had the confidence that this was her message and that it was what she was intended to do, which was help people. And so I could see her blossom right before me, which ties back to my belief about purpose, the best of who you are. So now she's operating in the best of who she is because she has the confidence to go forth and do her work in ways that she didn't have.
That's beautiful.
And on the other side of it, for the woman who is at the top of the wrong career ladder, I'm thinking of a client who had already raised her children, taken care of her husband, high ranks in her company where she's been for years, and looking back to say, where am I in all of this? And interestingly enough, as I work with her, she had a book inside of her, but she didn't want to call it a book. She had all these notes and things that she had collected, these brilliant thoughts. And she said, I have a writing project, because she too was afraid, there was their confidence issue, to call it a book because she hadn't done a book yet. And she was uncertain about, are these thoughts good enough to call a book? Although she had been working with people throughout her career, coaching and counseling within the job context. So we walked through those. I helped her understand what I said to you before: passions, values, natural abilities, and how to use those in service in a way that works for her. And this is for clients, whether they want to do that still within their job, or if they decide that they want to leave the job and do it elsewhere. But getting really clear about who that is and how your purpose has been calling you your whole life to be expressed. And it's a beautiful transformation to see.
And so in that particular case, that particular client, did she make the choice to step out of the business context?
No, she did not.
Or did she stay
She,
in the same area but just started to formulate her book?
yeah, I love that. I love that question. It's very astute. I love that question. She stayed. However, she proposed a new role. She was doing a little side project that really lit her up. It energized her. It was that's really where her passion was, but that was only like 25% of the role. She proposed to do 75% in that role and 25% in the other, while she's still working on this writing project, which I'm guessing one day will
Wow.
be a book out into the world. Yes.
That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
she got clear on really the work that she wanted to do within the company and how she felt she could make a difference.
And so that's a true example of leadership coaching, leadership and executive and leadership coaching.
Yes.
That's wonderful. And so, do you help people through the process of publishing a book if they want that expertise?
I don't, my company doesn't do that, but I partner with another company that takes that piece on, because I have to do what I preach. So I stay in my zone of genius.
Perfect. Perfect. That's wonderful. Those are really powerful, very powerful and wonderful case studies, in my opinion. And so I'd love to hear what your big aspirational goals are right now and where you see yourself going in the future.
Yes. I have a goal. Well, it's more of a vision, right? This big aspiration to see so many women, high achieving women, whether they're in official leadership roles or unofficial leadership roles, are experiencing what I just mentioned to you from both lanes, both sides. This confidence, they're confident in some areas of their life and work, but other areas, because they don't have that purpose or this idea of something missing. I would, I imagine myself leading a movement of millions of women who did not have purpose, who are now living out their purpose and living from who they truly are and spreading their message out into the world. That's my big grand vision.
That's beautiful. I love it. It's quite luminous.
Yes. Yeah. And imagine thinking about what they could be what they're already doing, and to have so many more women doing that. I mean, just the thought of it just makes me smile.
That is a beautiful vision. And so that tells me there's something bigger that you see yourself doing to bring that vision to life.
Yes. And I do what I tell others: stay in the moment, right? Because a lot of times if we get ahead of ourselves, that's when we talk ourselves off, talk ourselves out of it. I don't know what that vision, how it will come into fruition. However, I do know for now, the people who come to me, having conversations with you, on my own podcast, writing my books, speaking, teaching, coaching, that it will reveal itself as time moves on. But for me, to continue to do the work. And that's what I would say to
Mm-hmm.
other people. Do what you know, where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Bloom where you're planted.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. I see you taking the things that you're doing now, and it's almost like turning the aperture of a camera lens so that it may open a little bit more and let a little bit more light in, and you might have a new frame on what it's
Yes.
supposed to be.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, I think it won't take very long for you to see what that is. And it may just be a shade different from what you're currently doing or
Well,
adding something in.
I'm excited.
It'd be fascinating to journal on that for 30 days and see what reveals to you, what you learn.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm a person who likes to reflect. So I will do that.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you have on your heart that you want to share about what you're working on right now? Concerns that you have, desires in your heart that you'd love to see people reflect on and consider for themselves?
Yeah. Yes. I'd like to just reiterate in a different way what I've been saying, really, but to kind of tie it up in a bow and put a bow on it. We've gone through some tough times in recent years with the pandemic and all the societal and world situations. And we've gone through a collective trauma, most of us. I'd love to, whoever's listening or the message to get out to say, it is good and right to take some time to think about yourself. It is good and right to do the things you love, to do the things that matter to you, the things you're good at, because we feel like we don't always have permission to do it. And if that didn't teach us anything, that those years of that crisis and chaos, it's calling us to question what really matters. So I encourage people, take time, think about it, because I'm imagining lots of people are thinking about it, but still not ready to take a move. Not only is it okay to do, back to my belief, if it's on your mind like that, you're being called to do it
Mm-hmm.
from your best self, to be your true self. You may not be the same person you were when you started, whenever you started your career. This is your life calling you forward. Listen to it and follow it.
That is so heartfelt and absolutely speaks to my soul. And I think it is a wonderful thing for anyone that's lucky enough to listen to this episode to sit and reflect on and think, is there anything that I'm not currently doing that I feel called to do? Because when that small voice speaks to you and calls you to write or make music or do something creative, and you keep trying to stuff it down, you're not showing your own light or living out your foundational design.
Yes.
That is beautiful. I think the world would be a much kinder place if more people were living out their purpose.
I believe so too.
That is amazing. And so, what other things are you working on, Dr. Robin?
Well, that sounds like quite a bit already.
It is, definitely. You have a lot going on. There's no question about that. I'm very impressed with how productive you are. But I figured there's something else in the back of your mind that you're working on.
Yeah, one thing I don't think we talked about my podcast. We kind of mentioned that I do host a podcast. So I do want to just highlight that as an
Absolutely.
avenue.
Let's talk about leadership purpose with Dr. Robin. And I was so blessed to be part of your podcast. And I personally can't thank you enough for that opportunity.
Well, I'm so grateful to have your voice join us in the podcast. And the podcast stems from my heart's compassion and call for high achieving women, women who are responsible, ambitious, goal oriented, good at a couple things. People come to them for questions at work, in business, at home. Whether it's their area of expertise or not, people tend to come to them or want to, pick their brain for one thing or another, and they're doing all the things. So the podcast is a direct result of my questioning who supports them while they're supporting everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So the podcast is an opportunity for high achieving women to come together and support each other. They are always the leaders. So where do they get support? And I started the podcast later in my career, living out this thing that I teach of following my passions, because when I was in high school, I had a secret fantasy that I never told anyone because I didn't think it was possible. I said, I'd really love to be on the radio, because back then there weren't podcasts, but it was always sort of in the back of I was like, oh, that would be wonderful to be on the radio. And then when podcasts became a thing, I thought, here's my opportunity to follow a long held passion.
That's fantastic. I love it. I love the extrapolation there, because I hadn't even thought about the radio. I really hadn't even thought about it because I've been so focused on the medium in a different way. And so that's really special for me. That's very special.
And I hear your voice, and you have a radio voice, now radio podcast voice, something that I think draws in the attention of the listener.
That's very touching. Thank you. That's a very nice compliment. And you have an amazing voice as well.
Thank you. And I'm drawn to voices. I'm a bit of an audiophile. Some people really listen to, music in a certain way. I listen to good speakers and good voices, speaking voices.
That's wonderful. And so, are there favorite icons that you have from radio or television, from other mediums? Favorite voices?
Not particular voices, but here's an interesting tidbit. Because if they're good, I like them. Like if they're on the news, if they're on C-SPAN, even the sports announcers. So this is the tidbit. I love how the sports announcers, especially like in basketball, because they're moving so fast, how they can keep up with the movement of 10 people and speak the movements at the same time so the listeners and the watchers could have their perspective in real time. And when they do it with a nice, clear, strong voice, this is what I'm listening to, like people are listening to music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it takes a lot of training, honestly, for the sportscaster, especially when they've been an athlete first, to take on that role. I think it takes a long time to learn. I think it would be very hard. You definitely have to be a student of the game outside of being a player to take that on and do it well.
Yes, and the thing that I'm so struck by, the ability to communicate what your eyes see out of your mouth in real time, quickly like that, with a nice flow.
There's definitely individuals that are more talented than others.
Yes. Like with everything, right?
Exactly.
Like with every craft.
Exactly. And I definitely think that we can all get better at anything that we want to improve on if we work at it every single day.
Absolutely.
Dr. Robin, tell our listeners how they can find you.
I would love for them to listen to my podcast, since they like podcasts. And you can find my podcast wherever you listen to audio podcasts. And it is Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin. Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin. And if you want a video component, we are also on YouTube. So I'd love for you to come on over, listen to the podcast, be encouraged, inspired, and motivated. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on LinkedIn primarily at Robin L. Owens, PhD. At Robin L. Owens, PhD. And I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. Our listeners will certainly be checking you out, and they can find detailed information in the show notes as well. Excellent. Well, we've had a fascinating discussion today, Dr. Robin. Is there anything else that's on your mind or heart that you want to share?
I want to thank you for doing the work that you're doing. It's important work. It's meaningful. I could see your passion and your commitment for it. So I want to thank you for that and encourage you to keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to episode 12, Harnessing Your Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin L. Owens. There are 3 big takeaways from today's session for transformational thinking. First, purpose-driven leadership. Learning to integrate your passions, values, and natural abilities to create meaningful impact in your work and service to others. Second, embracing change. Hear how collective experiences such as the pandemic can serve as a catalyst for self-reflection and embracing new opportunities in line with your life's calling. And third, transformative guidance. Discover the resources and support Dr. Owens provides to women who seek to project their true selves more confidently in their professional lives. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode.